Hello and welcome to the Wisdom Factory, which is a forum for people who have experience, knowledge, and wisdom to share with the world. And we offer live conversations with really outstanding people who are contributing to create a better world. Most of our guests are inspired by integral theory. We have completed 3 thematic seasons last April, and now between the seasons we are offering conversations that matter on various important topics. And actually today we are continuing in some way the last season, because the last season was called Stop the Relation Shit, Grow Your Relations. And when you are interested in watching the 25 videos, I mean, maybe not all, but some of them with very outstanding people, you can go to our website, the bit.ly/Wisdom Factory, and there you can get it, all 25 videos for $29.
Buck a piece. Yeah, all right.
Okay, so today's title is
How to Prevent Couples from Snorkeling Mud Puddles. And maybe prevent is the wrong term to use here, as probably the couples have been snorkeling the mud puddles for some times before they meet our guest, Dr. Thomas Habib. and hello, Tom, say to people.
Good day, Heidi and Mark.
no, and thank you for having gotten up so early in the morning for
Yes,
you.
indeed.
Yeah, it's a little early here.
Great.
By way of introduction, we met Tom at the Integral European Conference about a month ago in Hungary. We got to know him and we heard what he would present. We invited him to share his expertise here online with you. He mentioned some important concepts like a couple's line of development. He talked about the prizes of unstructured regression, cultural expectations, unintegrated shadow, which was just absolutely fascinating to hear him develop to some extent. He's a clinical psychologist working in San Juan Capistrano, that's in California, folks, and specializes in couples therapy. Yes, of course. And he's the founder and managing partner in a 26-year-old private group practice that includes a clinical psychologist, a psychiatrist, and interns. And more details about that are available on our event page. So, Tom, is there something you'd like to add about your practice or yourself before we begin?
Well, I can see you were paying attention during my presentation. That was a pretty good recitation of what was going on.
You know what? We really watched the recording, because on our Wisdom Factory YouTube channel, there is the recording of our presentation, but also of the presentation of Tom.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, because the thing is, when you are inside of a conference 4 or 5 days full of input, you think every time, you remember that, and then at the end you don't remember. So I'm really grateful that I took the recording and that it's up and everybody can see it.
Yeah.
And really today we would like to talk about couples.
Yeah.
And you know, in my own experience, I began with psychotherapy when I was 40, because I thought, why doesn't it work with men? I mean, I had so many partners and I thought there's something wrong with me. So I began with psychotherapy and did NLP courses and a whole lot of psychological stuff, let's say. And I did also counselor training and so on. And I thought, with the one I had before him, now I'm ready, now I can do it, and I'm so good, I have developed so well. And then the person he came for, when I separated, thanks God.
Yes, thank you.
I felt sort of back. I knew I haven't understood anything in regard to couples, of my presence and couples. And so I find it very, very interesting that you say we don't only have a developmental line for our own development, but also for our capacity to be in a couple. And we would like to extend a little bit on that.
Right. So picking up on your remarks, Heidi, about couples therapy and men's participation, a lot of psychologists and therapists will remark they don't like doing couples therapy. We don't have many models of it. Martin Usick uses spiral dynamics as a model of development, which certainly adds something to the issue. There's a couple other people that have done some work in it. But really a model that gets at how do couples get stuck and where do they fall in the progression is really important. Taking a little bit of a larger view, though, we're not that many years away from when relationships were arranged. Can you imagine that? Your parents picked your relationship, and that's what you did. I still see couples from the Middle East and some Asian countries that are coming out of arranged marriages. It wasn't until in southern France that it became a matter of more, a matter of love, which one of the popes at the time tried to execute all the people because he saw it as a form of infidelity. So we're relatively new in this whole idea of intimacy really being a relational issue. So there's a lot to do still.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
One of our favorite psychologists, I've forgotten his name.
Keith Witt?
Keith Witt, you know, he talks about beginning couples therapy in the 70s, and in those days, the therapists never even got around to talking about sex with the couples, you know?
Right.
So we have come a long way, and we're really grateful you're working on this, because this is a revolutionary kind of development, I think, in the adding to the idea of development, not just of the individual, but of the couple. This is great.
Yeah, so could you line out a little bit the characteristics of the stages of where couples can go through or normally go through, where they get stuck and things like that?
Yes. Would it be okay to start with the quadrants a little bit first?
Okay. You might have to explain it a little, because not everybody here is going to immediately know what you mean by upper right, for example, lower left, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let me see if I can pull up this, and if I can do it right like you showed me. And here we go. Oops, I picked the wrong one.
It might be good too, though. Yeah.
Okay.
So these are the quadrants for those listeners out there that know a little bit about integral theory. The upper left has to do with our internal world, our individual internal world. The upper right has to do with our individual external world, like how my body feels, whether or not I have a headache, do I have a temperature, am I hungry? The lower left are the cultural messages we get in this society. And what's really central to couples' messages is much of our expectation of couples is in the lower left quadrant, and it's really developed by the popular media, especially movies. I like to say one of the reasons guys don't like chick flicks is because by the end of the movie, the women don't like us. We can't match the men that are depicted in those movies. And the lower right is how do you problem solve? It's the system of the couple. How do you problem solve? How do you regress? How do you have boundaries? And it's really kind of the knowledge base of a couple and what you end up doing. So if I was to say the quality of a couple relationship is dependent upon what did your parents model, that's upper left, and how did they handle conflict? So if you had a model of conflict that was good, then on the upper right, you're good at controlling the visceral reaction. Because I'm sure even with you, Heidi and Mark, being able to control the anger sometimes and the feelings sometimes, it can be a challenge. Do you find that also?
Absolutely.
Well, just today, as a matter of fact.
So that's the visceral reaction part of it during problem solving. But if you notice on the lower part of it, holding intimacy, when it's going really well and there's an intimate moment, do you look away or do you hold that moment to dilate that process a bit? Can you hold that connection and not react with shyness or feelings of overexposure?
Yeah.
So that becomes very important, looking at both elements of that. There's times where when I'm working with a couple, I get them just to look at each other and they can't smile or look away for 1 minute. And they almost find that torturous, that they have to look at their spouse for a minute straight. I mean, we know from some of our training, we do it for 20 minutes straight, just to calm that visceral reaction of it to some degree. So on the lower left,
just
please.
For the experience, what I wanted to share, I think it's exactly that, this being able to hold the emotions and not to fall into too much of this. Let's say it in a different way. In comparison to previous relationships, what you said, oh, I shied away, I was angry more. And I went away. Oh, excuse me, we share here one earbud, so we always interfere with each other. And, and holding the intimacy, there was no intimacy. And the intimacy very soon after, let's say, half a year or a year, when these things appeared, intimacy was gone. And what I see is the difference now with Mark. We are sometimes angry and shout, not really shout, but
cranky.
Cranky. But it takes maybe 5 minutes or even less. And one person says, oh, excuse me, that is my stuff or something like that. And the intimacy is maintained. There has never been any residue so far.
Any rupture.
Right.
Yeah, while in previous relationships, one disappointment, one feeling hurt after the other, they were sort of accumulating. And I think that's what you say with the mud puddles. The mud is increasing and increasing and increasing. And at the end, we get stuck in them and disappear, no? So it's, in my experience, it's exactly that has happened.
Right, I was just going to say that. That's snorkeling a mud puddle. When you use that entry point on, Harville Hendricks calls it a rupture in connection. And if you use that as an entry point that becomes subject, that we know from Keegan's work, rather than object, make it object quickly, then you're going to be in the mud puddle, which is today's talk. One of the things with Christine I really enjoy, when we travel, and you know what it's like traveling and driving in a foreign country. And I take a left when she said right. And I go, you said left. And no, I said right. And then we get it correct. And within a minute or two, I touch her leg. She puts a hand on mine. And we move on. We don't snorkel that. I'm so grateful. So I call that spatting well. Does that translate well, spatting well?
To spat means to fight, like a cat.
Okay, and then it's done. When it's done, it's done. Yeah,
then it's done. You know, rather than, because most people begin to problem solve during conflict. And it'd be better to do it when they're not in conflict. They wait for a while. You know, they got the visceral reactions in the upper right under control. But the point is, and we know from integral theory, in couples, all 4 quadrants are rising in every moment.
Yeah.
And that's what integral has to offer psychologists that do couples work. I don't know any other theoretical structure that absolutely contains all those dynamics at one moment. So that's quite a contribution. Wilbur had predicted integral was going to hit psychology fastest. He didn't realize the couples were really where everything emerges at once. And that's why you end up with couples fighting so strongly.
Yeah, and couples life, I think it's a sort of an accelerator even for the personal development, because you have to learn to hold and contain the emotions, you know, because otherwise nothing. And when you have this possibility to observe yourself and step out of your own what do I say, subjectivity or something, then it's done. I mean, you are not caught into it anymore. And this is what spirituality tries to teach people, isn't it? To look from outside. So,
but when you're alone, it's much easier to step outside.
Because there are no triggers.
Yeah. I mean, I was perfectly happy by myself.
Me too.
And then, well, anyway.
But you're right, Mark. Yeah. When you're alone, it's easier to control your own emotion.
Yeah.
But when you get in an interaction, it becomes much more complicated. And then, of course, that's that upper left, depending on your developmental history. If your parenting was poor, and we were raised in parenting where perhaps mom wasn't as responsive, then we're going to be acutely sensitive to how our spouse responds to us. So we can see it. We haven't even gotten to the lower left quadrant yet.
We got 4 quadrants to go here. Yeah.
Come on, let's go to the others.
Okay, so let's see if we can get over here. Are we back on the screen?
It's not up yet. No.
Okay, sorry.
We can talk a little bit in the meantime. Yeah, it's an accelerator. Being in
here it is.
Here we are. Okay. I get that.
So we're going to talk about the couple lines today. You want to say something, Mark?
Well, a couple of these things might need some explanation.
The lines, also the concept of lines, you might say a little bit to that, because...
Yeah, the concept of a line of development in integral theory is... like an easy one to understand is when we look at the development of a child, and early on they develop motor control, then they develop language, then they develop abstract thoughts, and we can see it's a progression of skills that include the previous skills, but they add something as they go along. Somebody that's had some psychology understand Piaget's line of development, but what's unique on that line, he stopped at 12 years of age. And of course, we know on the individual lines of development, there's higher stages of consciousness that we can develop that we're downloading from the Eastern tradition. So, do you have something you could say on lines that would help that?
Yeah, I would also say that we have different sorts of lines. For instance, musical line, the development in your musical ability, artistic creativity, emotional line, which is a very important line. How far are you able to handle your emotions?
Kinesthetic line.
Kinesthetic line.
Athletic development.
How is your body consciousness? Something.
All kinds of things.
Okay, so one of that would be in the couples line, your ability to live in a couple in a good way.
That's what he's adding to this mix,
yes,
I think.
and this is wonderful.
Okay. But I want to say a word about the lower left.
Okay.
Because this is an area that's really important for couples, because most of our imagery we get and most of our dreams and hopes we get come from the popular culture, and they provide a idealized level of love. They provide the dream that we all would want. That's why we watch the movie. So one of the ones I like to always tell couples, we all have to live with the ability to imagine love greater than we can ever have. isn't that tough?
Oh,
We all have to live with the ability to imagine love greater than we can ever have.
yeah.
And what we're talking about is the ideal. And an ideal, by definition, is a beacon we're going to always be walking toward. We never arrive because it's always going to be out further, and that's part of our individual development.
Mm-hmm.
It's really a gift that we can idealize because we can always have a source of growth. But you can see in that lower left, ideals and distortion. But if we allow an ideal to contaminate contentment, then we're in trouble. Does that sound clear?
Ideals
Absolutely.
contaminating contentment,
Yes.
getting in the way of what is here.
When we think
Right.
the ideal must be reality, without seeing that ideal is a vision where we want to go to. No,
Right.
we need a vision if we want to go to something, but without vision, you are all over the place. But then what is a problem, and I'm a NER type 4, who is always what is missing,
Oh.
and most people say, oh, that's not with me, and so it's something wrong, and I should be. And then that's the easiest way to make ourselves unhappy. So.
Absolutely. And the Enneagram 1 tends to do that also.
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh.
Perfectionism of that. Right.
More with the law, you should do. While we say, oh, we are not, oh, we haven't got it yet. More on the complaining end.
What's wrong with me? I'm a 9.
And you're a 6.
No, I'm a 9.
Yeah.
We changed. I
He changed
identity.
identity.
Yes,
Yeah.
I did.
Oh, you don't move at all.
What's the problem?
Anyway, what I think also that common culture is sort of not only idealizing couple life, but over idealizing couple life. And not only that, I mean, couple ends with a honeymoon for them. They don't give any positive injunctions for how couple life could be. They show afterwards the drama in the films, in couples. This comes, yeah, but something in between to say how after honeymoon, how can we handle the conflicts which have to come. I mean, that's inevitable that they come. Otherwise, we are not alive, no? When we were all the same, we wouldn't
Right.
be to me.
That's why the movies end at the first stage, because they don't know where to go, and it's not as interesting, and it just looks like people's lives.
Mhm.
So that's a very good segue into the couples line I think we probably should get to.
Okay.
And so I think I'm getting how to use this. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yes. Uh-huh.
So here's the couples line.
Mhm.
And it starts down here at the bottom at safety and attraction.
Okay.
And this is a stage we all love. This is what the movies use. It's wonderful. They're wonderful feelings of romantic love. You know, we're absorbed in the person. We think we died and went to heaven. And if you're old enough, you have some inkling it's not going to last at this level forever. If you don't have that inkling, you're not ready to get married or commit to anyone. And you're not going to do well when you get thrown out of safety and attraction. But safety and attractions, as Wilbur tells us, because of the pre-transcendent fallacy, it's really based more on the chemistry, you know, that powerful chemistry when it clicks together, and the sexual attraction is very powerful. The projection's very powerful. We love them more than we know them. We don't really even know that person yet. But the feelings of love are incredibly powerful. And it's a wonderful stage. But inevitably, and what you had said already, Heidi, is we're not prepared that when we get thrown into the role stage, and I always like to say what ends safety and attraction and moves us on to the role stage is perhaps she has menstrual cramps, you know, he comes to dinner with a dirty shirt on. He's not communicative. She's irritable. You know, the normal things that happen in relationships puts us in the role stage. And then people are aware that things are changing in the relationship. So if you haven't done this a number of times, the relationship usually ends. If you're a young couple and it's the first time you experience this, you're going to catastrophize it and the relationship is going to end. But that's what you were referring to, right, Heidi?
Yeah, because you think it should always be like this. It should, no? Because we know it from the films. It should be. This is the end stage of
It was like
and it
that.
was wonderful.
Yeah.
And now it should stay up to the death as parted. So we think it is a failure, or the other person is not right, or we are not right. Very often we think we are not right. And for many people, this is the reason to look for the right person, because they think there is somebody else who is fulfilling what I need, without noticing that this is, as you say, a stage, and with the other person, the same thing will come again. So we have serial monogamy.
Pure monogamy. Yeah.
We are good in this. We have in the fourth long-term relationship. So we didn't change every half year, but every 10 years or so.
It lasted a long time, each one. How many years of relationship do we have? About 40, 50? Yeah.
Okay,
So
let's get on.
I find that most couples, it's not that they're with the wrong person, they can't move on. They can't accomplish some of the goals that need to be done. So if I can get back there, then,
yeah.
So notice on the left here, can you see that writing?
Yeah.
Expulsion from the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
And do you remember in the biblical parable, what gets Adam and Eve thrown out of the Garden of Eden? Eat from the tree of
knowledge.
knowledge.
Okay.
It's the knowledge of our spouse, more full knowledge, that gets us thrown into here. But in the role stages, now we got to begin to lay down the patterns of how to function as a couple, whether we're mother and father, girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife. We're starting to lay down all these patterns, and that's hard work because, you know, handling all the regression we were talking about before, you know, on the lower left, comparing what we have now with all that idealization. And the two persistent fantasies you already said, Heidi, is down here. Can you see it? Down here, the persistent fantasy. The fear that you made a mistake who you picked is one fantasy. And the other fantasy that persists is other people get to live at safety and attraction.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And they don't. Nobody gets to live there at safety and attraction. Everybody ends up having to move along the line.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, most couples stay at the role stage. And if they're really good, they can make it to the third stage, the relational stage. And did you want to say anything here?
Yeah, I wanted to say that Martin Ujik has listened, but he says he has to leave. And he is integral relationship expert, and he wrote a book about a manual for men. And I really would love to create a talk between you two, because I really think you could both fertilize each other in that. So Martin, thank you that you are here, and we looking forward to have you in a conversation. Thank you. Okay.
Well, you know,
that would be
go ahead. You're right.
That would be a good dialogue, because Martin excels at articulating the masculine experience in couples. And that really needs to be done, because as we know, we're still in feminism, and we haven't had masculinism where men get real about their own lives and about their relationship to women. So Martin's work is good in that area, because I find him especially strong at articulating some of the challenges for men.
That's true. I found him very helpful for me. But what I was about to say was that in history, often couples never had to get past the role stage. It was a successful relationship if they just did what was expected of them. And society reinforced that, and you didn't have to go any further. You know?
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
That's absolutely right. The next stage, if it's okay if I switch over,
Yes.
is relational stage. And this didn't come online until the mid-'60s with feminism.
Mm-hmm.
And prior to that, everything was safety and attraction and roles.
Yeah.
And so in the mid-'60s, with everything that, as we entered in spiral terminology, the green stage of plurality and equality, then we actually wanted to go to the relational stage where we're going to be equal, we're going to share, the best skills were going to rise to the top. We even experimented with androgyny.
Mm-hmm.
In my understanding of androgyny, there was going to be no differences between the sexes. And that got a little boring because the polarity that David Bader talks about in terms of the masculine energy and feminine energy got lost. And so we've gotten away from androgyny, and we're doing more equality, but we're retaining the relational nature of it. And that's much more worthwhile. But this is the new stage. And in doing therapy, if I can get most couples to relational stage, I call it a day, and that's as high as they're going to go.
And it's accomplished.
Yeah, and I wanted to say, I think most of our couples' problems today is that we have the vision of this stage. We want to have a relational stage, at least we women. And then we have men who don't want to communicate.
What's the problem?
What's the problem? What do you want?
Huh.
Things like this. And I think this is creating a whole lot of problems in couples. The men all come with in some way, or they hold back and then...
Yeah.
Right. Because this is a stage that's getting implemented right now, it hasn't been that long. I mean, we can look back to the old television shows and some of the things they said to each other, we would never say today. Do you remember the show All in the Family?
Oh, sure. Uh-huh.
Last night, my wife and I and my sister-in-law were watching it, and it's outrageous what they got away with. But we can see how far we've come in just 45 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the stage we're still in, and it is a lot of challenges, as you say, Heidi.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think women are a half step ahead of men in this regard, generally speaking, at the moment. Because they started coming out 50 years ago, and they've had some chance to adjust to a new level of being, and men have just been kind of left confused and angry and not understanding what the hell's the problem. It was great, you know, and now all this has happened.
Yeah, and yes and no. Yeah, yes, we are ahead, I would say, but we want it all. We want to keep our privileges and our old ways of doing, of manipulating, of demanding, of everything, you know, and the seduction thing, and I can get everything, you know, the stuff which we had our power before, and we want to be peer. So we ask only, very, very many of us ask of men, and they are, how can I give it all? So what I think, men have to develop their communication skills, this is my idea, but women have to give up this way of, you know, this old way of getting what they want, you know, and this way. And we have to become more real and really give up the role play, also the sexual object. Yeah. And it's not yet the way. I mean, so many women are concerned with their, you know, this can be, but if it's the main thing of, I heard only lately, where was it, how many women, was a huge percentage, read cheap romance novels, you know?
Right. There's a study that showed there's 25,000 women in the States that read 20 or more romance novels a month. And I always like to say, if you're reading 2 a month, you're obsessed with the ideal. But it does show Warren Farrell calls that woman's pornography.
Yes.
The idealization of romance. Whereas men's pornography, we know what it is sexualizing women. And that puts a lot of pressure on women. My practice, as you said, is in Orange County, California. And we have more plastic surgeons. And it's the pressure on women in terms of trying to prevent aging. And it's interesting because the issue of masculinism, there's been a lot of people that thought we would have been in the throes of masculinism by now, and we haven't. And the question is, why is there a delay in going into that? Because it seems like, I mean, it's been 50 years. It seems like we should be there now. I was reading one article that the whole movement is dead other than in academic departments. Unconsciously, there's a dynamic between the sexes that nobody wants to give it up. Men don't want to give up their idealization of Aphrodite, you know, the sex goddess.
Yeah.
And women don't want to give up their romantic notions. Progress is unconscious resistance, but I'd be interested in what you think. Why?
This is very interesting because we don't really know how deep and embedded those archetypes are. You know, this goes back a long, long, long time, and it might even be in our DNA now. You know, so I think this is an open end how it can go and progress. But that's leading us a little astray from, I think, where you wanted to go with this talk.
But to add, I have begun also in the Wisdom Factory a series which I call Women Matters. And I want, together with other women, explore why we are still not stepping up. As in the conference, 20% on the stage were women. You know, in the audience we're all, we are not more stupid or something, but there is something which holds us back. And I think this is more or less the same, what we are talking about. We are not yet really ready, fully take our part. You know, we are sort of fearful, holding back. And there's nothing bad about it because it is ingrained in our psychology for thousands of years. But I think we are now in a time where there are so many beautiful tools who help us to work on unconscious beliefs, and that we really need to do the work and go out. And I do think first the women, when we don't identify anymore to be the sex object for the man in this sense, and offer to men something else. You know, I know men who are attracted by intelligent women and women who show up, and there might be some more, you know. So we have to work. And I always say when in a couple is a problem and the woman has already tried, you know, psychotherapy or something, I say, it's really us. It's again us. Before it was us to keep the families together, okay. But it's maybe life is not fair, but it's again us. If we want our situation different, we have to do it. And not ask for the men, please, you have to do it. We have to do it. And I think we are in the position when we get in this relational state, and relationships for women normally is more easy to, because it's sort of our home play, let's say, you know. So then we can help men to come into that, but not by saying you have to, like I said today, what did you do to promote the thing? You know, I know that's not right.
Right. So I mean, I agree. Women have work to do, and it's probably part of the reason why we haven't had it. But I agree with Mark too, that many of these things are primitively held and held as shadow. and we're just not aware of them yet. I like to always joke, the couple years my wife out earned me as a psychologist, and I would walk around going, I'm a kept man. And I was only joking, but I know there's a little bit of truth in a joke.
Yeah.
And I was laughing at myself because I actually felt that my provider role was usurped a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we're evolving. It's still emerging, as you said. Should we go on?
Yeah, okay.
Please. Excuse me.
If we do all the work in the relational stage and we learn how to work back and forth, we can handle the regression, we spat well, we don't snorkel those mud puddles, and we move on, because still at the relational stage, we're looking back at safety and attraction, and those two fantasies are persisting. I married the wrong person, and other people get to live at safety and attraction. But if we do well at the relational stage, we can get into the first love. And first love is the first time, I call it first love because it's the first time you're really in love with your spouse rather than your projection. And one of the ways I like to introduce it is, can you imagine if you were sick and your neighbor came over and they cooked lunch for you, they took care of the children, they vacuumed, they did a load of laundry? Wouldn't you feel that was a great neighbor? I mean, you'd be indebted to that person for decades, never forgetting what an effort they made that one day. So when we think about our spouses, they do that day in and day out. And it's the failure to be mindful of their dedication that prevents our center of gravity to rise to that level of abundance. But obviously, individually as a practice, we have to be able to do that in terms of our own mindfulness, because if you have one person at a lower level of development, they're going to set a ceiling on what the couple can do. So individually, we have to be able to do that in terms of, are we mindful and living the abundance, or does the anxiety control our experience? But when you get two people doing it, then you're at first love, because those moments of intimacy are prolonged. Each other, you're realizing just how much you're actually doing and giving for each other. Doesn't that feel great when I describe it that way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
sometimes we have a little glimpse of that.
Yes, sure we do. Yeah. I bet.
But it means staying out of the mud puddles and trying to stay in the abundance. I always like to say, when I see a couple that is an average shape and they can do 85% right, and that 15% wrong becomes like 80% of their evaluation of the relationship. In fact, it was that awareness that helped me develop the couples line, because I asked myself, why do they do that? And you can see by now, it's that pre-transcendent fantasy of living at safety and attraction. Can you feel that? What a black hole that creates for couples?
Absolutely.
Sure. And you're calling this final stage first love is kind of counterintuitive, because when I first saw it, I said, first love, well, that would be the infatuation stage, where you don't even know what love is, you're just in love.
Right.
But it makes perfect sense that this really is
the first time that you are really loving a person and not the image of the person. Or the image of what you want in your head,
Right. You're not in love with the idealized image. At first love, nobody lives at that lower stage. That's a fantasy. I don't care what the movies say. You have to do the work to live in the abundance, just like our own practices and development. You don't just enter these upper stages. you do your work. How are we doing time-wise?
We've got 45 minutes gone, I should say.
So we have 15 minutes
We
left.
can go another
That's
15
okay.
if you like.
Do you want to go to the next stage?
Yeah.
Yeah. What comes next? Yes, what's next?
That was that conference, right? So I rarely see couples even at first love. Christine and I, when she originally read the paper, she asked me once, where do you think we are, Tom? And I said, well, what a loaded question.
Whoa, yes.
And so I said to her, she read the paper, I said, well, obviously I've thought about this. Where do you think we are? And she did real well. She picked it real well. She said, we're at relational, but we tend to float up to first love here and there.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really good because that was my feeling on it too. And as we practice it, you know, like remember the visceral reaction? I can catch her eye at times, and I notice she spends more time looking at me, and I can feel that feeling more. And so as a practice, we're dilating the time at first love. So it's not easy to do. I mean, you've got to be able to calm everything, decide the previous hurts. You got to compartmentalize what's undone, because there's always more undone, right? And we want it to be object, not subject. And boy, couples will help you practice that and get there.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah, I think it is like all lines, all developmental stages, that in our best time we are more up, and then there come moments of being triggered and
Regression.
whatever, and then we fall down, you know, and then we go up again. But the good thing is when we already know how it feels like in the next higher stage of development, then we know where we want to go.
We want to go there.
Yeah.
We want that.
absolutely. And you can see why the turmoil today is, as soon as we went to the green level of development on spiral, then the relational stage of couples set in. But because of the chronic disappointment and not knowing what to do with the idealization, excuse me, that couples need to be able to understand that first love is where it resides. Because if you can just spend a few moments there, it's going to renew the hope.
Yeah.
Not that you can't drop down into some of the sex and the intimacy of the safety and attraction, but you can feel how healing first love becomes, because it renews the hope, it re-enchants the relationship. So societally, we need this. I'm seeing couples constantly, they don't know what to do, and they're wondering what goes on.
And
so you want to hear the good stuff?
Yeah, I want to ask you, what can they do?
Yeah.
Well, they've got to accomplish the relational stage. They've got to have all the rules of the roads down. We don't want them snorkeling mud puddles because they'll never get there. And you said earlier how easy it's to get into the mud puddle, Heidi.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy for me. You already told people I'm a psychologist. My wife's also a psychologist. She once said to me, if it's this hard for us, what do other people do?
That's exactly, yeah. When we have a sort of an understanding of what it is about, no? And when you have not at least an intellectual understanding, then you feel...
Yeah.
That's why you are there, and sometimes me too, to you give a guideline, no, to that. So really great.
But we're just starting. I mean, in time, this will develop further and further.
Yeah.
But at least we have a direction.
Yeah, and it needs ever more people who come into this situation that they want to change and that they go through the pain of disappointment and to really be enticed enough to do the work, because it is work. It doesn't fall from the sky. It's not just fall in love and everything is done.
No, and it's contingent upon their individual work and then doing their couple work.
Absolutely.
So you're absolutely right. That's why couples is so hard. So here's the good stuff. And I've never seen a couple at this level. That's why this couple is very rare. Both members are deep into their second tier capabilities, which means they developed enough of an inner world and a peace in that inner world that they can go there in a moment. So in terms of the couples, the deficiencies in the relationship, it's old hat. They know it's going to happen. But rather than making it a visceral experience, it's explored from a third or fourth person perspective. And the couple together can explore it and integrate it. So it becomes just another avenue of shadow to be integrated in the whole. Transparency for this couple is very easy. They can stand in front of each other fully transparent, and they can look at one issue in their transparency without feeling overexposed, feeling naked, needing reassurance, because they're familiar with that space. We find that what we love about these integral conferences is running into people that are open and able to share at this level.
Yeah.
But couples, it's even more of a challenge because you have everything on the line. It's amazing how couples are more careful with their spouse than they would be with a stranger. I always experience this one, that I'm always amazed that a couple will tell me 20% more when I meet with them individual, one-on-one, than when their spouse is in the room. Because of the danger they feel in that intimacy, that overexposure at that level. But at the spiritual level, they're comfortable with that. It feels more like communing. You know, they've settled all that visceral down. They're aware of enough shadow. They've done enough shadow work that the old Epictetus dictum, I love Epictetus. When he got criticized, his response was, "That's all they think I do wrong?" And you can feel how at peace he was with his emergence. And to be at spiritual level, you have to be well in that area, because otherwise, most couples, even at relational at safety, you tell them they did something wrong, they're wounded. And then they're in the mud puddle again. So to be at that spiritual level of love, you've got to really have that individual stability to be able to stay there. So because they can do that, they can do joint witnessing, serves the open space greater than either could achieve. So they're looking out at the universe of possibilities, and because they're joined together and they're observing together, they can see things emerge at the moment that other couples can't.
Right.
So intuition and subtle energies begin to feed their awareness. There's heightened presence. There's peak experiences of love. There's the creative advance into novelty. And we know where that comes from. That's Whitehead's comments 100 years ago. The creative advance into novelty. And then the experience becomes of the beloved, because how many partners like this are you going to get?
Yeah.
One would be quite enough. Yes.
One would be enough.
So I would have a question here, because you say it's the spiritual stage. We have many people who do spiritual paths and talk about love and things. This seems to be something quite different. Can you speak to that?
Well, as any development, our individual development, if we have spiritual consciousness and a feeling of the divine, and we can hold it, and then with the stranger, where you don't have all the complications of intimacy, we can be present in it. But then the leap to a couple, that's a hard leap. The danger is so present because of the intensity of the experience.
Mm-hmm.
So they do parallel each other, that I think you're intimating, Heidi. But the challenge at the couple level is even stronger than the challenge at the individual level. In the individual level, Terry O'Fallon talks about in her, I think you interviewed her once, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Reoccurring patterns. She calls autopoetic, which we don't need to go into. But in a new stage of development, we all tend to go internal and get our arms around it first, because we're not feeling secure. We feel it emerging. And it's a little disturbing because it's changing our set.
Mm-hmm.
But in couples, that's even scarier. But that's the beauty of this spiritual level. They're expecting it. They feel that change, that destruction of the set. They're looking at it together. They trust each other and they go, this is interesting. What's next?
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I've never seen a couple like that. I'm just feeling into
Mm-hmm.
the possibilities from the lower stages and speculating what it could be.
And that brought up exactly what I had in mind to ask you. You've never seen a couple like this. So I'm asking, well, if there were a couple like this, why would they bother coming to see you? You know? And if they did, what would they be concerned about? What would be their problems, you know?
Right. Some couples at the relational stage are doing fine, and they just want to enhance their development, so they'll do it for that. Yeah. So I think down the road, some future predecessor gets to work with these couples.
Uh-huh.
But I just don't. I mean, look at how close we're to the relational stage. It's only since the 60s.
Yeah.
And so anyone that does lines of development, we're all speculating. What are like the third tier level?
Mm-hmm.
We don't know yet. But it's okay. It's better to speculate and then try to verify it later on empirically, scientifically.
And it's fun to speculate. It's fun.
I have another question. So, do some people, when they hear spirituality, they So, do you need to have a spiritual path or believe in spirituality to arrive at the spiritual level?
Well, we know the reason why people reject spirituality is because of the dogmatic interpretation. So the pre-modern interpretation of spirituality, they end up rejecting it in like an adolescent rebellion. And until they find something that fits with them better, and we know in terms of development, that was the whole postmodernism, is the rejection of that. Life had no purpose. It was nihilistic, and it wasn't until integral that the world becomes re-enchanted. I love that phrase.
Yeah.
So the short answer is yes. Is how is there meaning and purpose? Yeah, we are meaning making, but without a notion of the divine, how do we know what direction to go in? So even if we go back to Plato, Plato said it was the good, the beautiful, and the truth that drives us. And we know that. We know that as a practice. We live with the good every day, trying to do the good. And we can feel it driving us. So it's the old issues of, I don't really even believe there's an atheist. It's a person searching, because they got to be driven by something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a very great answer, I think.
Good one. Yeah.
So we are over the hour, but I would like you to say something to people who are struggling at the moment in their relationship. What can you give them a little bit of a quick advice what they could do to become happy again?
Okay, that's a good question. Is people at the roles and relational stage that are trying to get into the relational stage that are struggling, the easiest thing to do in the world is see what's wrong with your spouse. The harder part is to see what is this trying to show you need to master next. What are you doing wrong? Because the one thing that couples will make you do is grow individually. It's somebody that's going to get down in the mud with you and show you where you're not perfect. So when couples are struggling, when I get them stop pointing out the other person's flaws and just look at yourself, clear the table of all the wreckage, and create a dialogue, a pattern upon which you can develop those skills of give and take, problem solving, being responsive to intimacy, all those things you need to sustain the upper stages, you have to have those down. So that'd be the one thing. Stop identifying what's wrong with your other person. Mm-hmm. It's harder to see the trees when you're in the middle of the forest, but you got to be able to see those trees.
Yeah, this is a great advice. And also in my idea, it's the very first thing is take everything back to you. Don't look for the outside world, but look for a while in the inside world. But what is very important, what I find very, very important, not blame. No blame and shame. But just know that this is what is wrong with you, not wrong in the moral sense, but what could I do better for to arrive where I want to arrive, and I want to arrive to be happy. No?
What's a limitation?
What is aligned in my behavior, in my thoughts, in my feelings with my goal to become happy, and what is counteracting? So what in my experience, what I always had observed myself, but always in this blue, say, spiral matter, this is wrong and you need to be punished, and this not, I think many people don't want to get their perspective on themselves because they think it's my fault, I'm guilty, and that's not,
Right, it's all emerging, you're right, dropping into a blue level of accusation. We're all going to do it to some degree. Consciousness, we can choose to rise to a higher level and take a little bit more ownership.
Exactly.
So that's absolutely right.
So thank you. And the integral gives us so much more possibility to understand these things and to come out of the mud.
And so does understanding that there's a couple's line of development.
Wonderful.
Right.
Yes.
So this has been fun. I've enjoyed doing this dialogue with you guys.
Oh,
yeah, me too.
too.
Really a lot. Thank you so much. And I hope our viewers at the moment, live viewers who are there, I see that, and also the viewers in the future, they enjoy it, and let us know. Write comments under the YouTube video, also on the event page. Let us know how you found it, what is not clear, ask questions or give suggestions. What is your experience? Tell us your story. And we are happy to create also a platform to talk about these things. And we have actually a Facebook community page. This is here, a short link, bit.ly/big letters WF-FB. This is one thing. And then if you want to have further information of what we're doing, every now and then I write a newsletter. And this on our website, thewisdomfactory.com, but DE.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is DE for
And if you subscribe for the newsletter, you get a free gift. It's the last ebook, The Crisis, the Era of Crisis. With Said Dalabani and Tom Freeman was not there, but Elsa Malouf and many people talking about the crisis, and it's for free if you subscribe. So, okay, thank you very much, and see you for the next event. We will have a women's circle in Wednesday 22. So if you are women or interested in women matters, join us.
I'll listen in, but I won't say anything.
Okay. Oh,
All right. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Love you.